Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to the podcast. I am Melody Pourmoradi, and you are listening to Empowering Her. We've got a fun solo episode before we kick off an amazing series called the Power Play series, where I am chatting, just having these empowerment chats with women from our community about all of the different subjects that we teach our empowerment coaches, that we teach in our Girl Life Collective. And we're just riffing on the coolest topics with the coolest people. And you're just going to want to stay tuned. You're going to want to stay tuned because we've already started recording these episodes and they are magic and these women are magic. And I can't wait for you to experience them firsthand, the way that they navigate the world with the principles of the Girl Life curriculum. It's going to be so good. Um, Today, I want to talk about something super special. Before I do, I want to thank you all. I feel like we have this gorgeous soul community. You've been so amazing, reaching out, checking in as my daughters have headed off to school. It's like amazing. I've got this built-in soul vibe with all of you, and I'm so grateful. And I just want to say things are going great. We visited both kids, they're doing well. They were just here for the Jewish holidays. So all is well. Thank you for all who've checked in. Okay. So I don't know if you've heard about this letter. I don't know if you've heard about Einstein's experience when he was a young boy, but that is what inspired me to record this episode for you. And it's all about how we get to pre-frame experiences for our children so that they're set up to thrive, so that they're set up to be resilient. We want to see them for their potential, for the amazing humans that they are, and treat them the way we would treat the highest version of them, the most empowered version of them. Now, there's a story that when Einstein was a young boy in school, his teacher sent a letter home with him and said, "Please don't open it. Give it to your mother. It's for her eyes only, and she should read it." So he comes home from school and he gives that letter to his mom and watches his mother open it and read it. As she reads it, the the tears start streaming down her face, and she's clearly getting very emotional, and she's um just like feeling the feelings as she reads the letter, and Einstein is watching her wondering what on earth is happening. So when the mother finishes reading the letter, Einstein says, "Mom, what was that all about?" And the mother says, "They have shared, the school, the principal, the teachers have shared that you are a genius and that this school is just too small for you. And it doesn't have enough teachers who can nurture your kind of talent. And they want me to find a better way to teach you." And if I'm correct, there have been a few different stories, but the story goes that the mom started homeschooling him. And what a beautiful thing, right? That's what the mom shared with the son. Now, actually, what's really going on behind the scenes is that the letter from the school was saying that Einstein, her son, is mentally incapable of following the curriculum and that he's essentially being expelled from the school, like that they cannot continue to allow him to be a part of that school because he doesn't have the concentration and lacks the intelligence. And what an unbelievable thing that the mother did in real time in the moment is that instead of telling her son all of the horrendous things that this institution said about him, on the fly, she decided to share a positive message, to share a message of hope, to share a message that instilled confidence and courage in her son. And this fueled his future. It fueled his brilliance and his groundbreaking contributions to the world, to science. So, how we choose to present information to our children is everything. Um, we get to change up their own perceived limitations. We can reshape and reframe the way that a child sees themselves. Now, I'm not saying we should lie to our children, but there are ways that we can hold them to a higher standard. Like, I want you to consider what would have happened if the mother would have shared the actual letter with her son. She would have killed his self esteem. He would have gone on to think he's worthless and unable to create anything. And that would be that. But why would anyone do that to their kids? So, this is like a really extreme example, but I wanted to start this episode off with that extreme example of how much power we hold. We've talked about this so much. We cannot change our children. We cannot, but we can lead by example. We could model what we want to see grow and expand within them. And we can treat them. It's so hard to put it into words what I'm trying to say, but if we can witness the wisest, the most intuitive version of them and treat them as if that's who they are today, then we are instilling and inspiring the greatness from them. We can subconsciously shape a child's reality, and that is everything. When I think of an example in my own life, I think about one of my daughters who is super sensitive. And from a young age, she's been super sensitive. And as she was getting, the more she would mature, the more she would grow, the more she started to think that that was one of her biggest weaknesses, her sensitivity. And in our conversations, it was really important that my husband and I encouraged her to know, trust, and believe that her sensitivity was actually her superpower. Being able to feel deeply is beautiful because, yes, we feel the difficult stuff more deeply, but we also can appreciate and have gratitude for the good stuff in a deeper, more meaningful way. We get to really see people, we get to be with them where they're at, um, we get to be empathetic. We get to feel things that perhaps other people aren't feeling because they're not as in tune with their sensitivity. So it was really important for me that we did that for her, because if not, she'd go through her life thinking that it's this thing that's holding her back. It's a limitation, and she would act accordingly. But why? Why would we do that? Why not reframe it? Why not take that thing that she thinks is such a negative and turn it into a positive? Because at the end of the day, we can reframe anything. We can reframe anything. You've heard me say before, when something not so great happens, what would it be like if we said, how is this the best thing that ever happened to me? Right? I was working with a young 20 something girl recently who had a job. She didn't love the job. She got a new job. As soon as she went to her first day, they rescinded the offer. It was just like a silly, crazy situation that should never happen. But we were talking about it. We were like, how's this the best thing that's ever happened to you? How can we reframe this? Maybe this just saved you from working for months for an organization that was going to release you in an even harsher, more sudden way. Maybe this is paving the way for the next best opportunity. How is this the best thing that's ever happened to you? So, there's so much power in the way that we pre-frame those experiences. We actually talk about this a lot in my book called Empowered Women, Empower Girls. Shout out to the people who've already read it. If you haven't, it's available on Amazon and it's on audiobook now too. But my next point is the power of self-talk, which we dive really deeply into in one of the chapters of my book. But our children absorb our own internal narratives. So if we like make these blanket statements like, I'm so bad at math, or I'll never be good at this, they're going to mirror that in their lives. That's going to create the internal dialogue of their own lives. So on the topic of pre-framing their experiences, what a gift it is to upgrade our own self-perception so that for ourselves and for them, we set the foundation of how they will view their own capabilities. It's a win-win. I always say this. It's a win-win when we can look in the mirror, do the inner work, first and foremost for ourselves, but then to really pay it forward. We pay it forward by doing the work for ourselves and and instilling that growth mindset in our children as a result of it. Another way that we are framing the world for our next generation is through the media that we consume. Children notice what we engage with, the news, the TV shows, the social media. Are we asking our kids to stop scrolling and we cannot stop our scroll? Are we watching TV shows that are violent and filled with terror? Do we have the news on all the time? Like there is so much in the news that can potentially take us down. And that carries out in the way that we move through our day and our lives, and our children are watching. I know as a child, when my parents had the news on a lot, it like at the end of the day was dysregulating my nervous system. They didn't know they were doing it. They were just like innocently, they wanted to be informed citizens of the world. But there is a limit. We get to create a boundary with the media. We don't need to listen to all of it because at the end of the day, most of the news is sensationalized. A lot of it these days isn't even true. So, what about we set parameters and get our fix like 3 times a day or 2 times a day, or we read the headlines on an app instead of having the news on all the time and creating more and more drama. So we don't need to promote more fear, more scarcity, or more comparison because those are the values they adopt. So, what are we engaging with? What media are we engaging with? And on the topic of media, I wanted to share something that recently happened. I was out for dinner with my husband and I was looking around me and I saw that every kid under the age of like 17 who was sitting at the table with their family was actually on a device, which I'm not judging. Like my kids would do the same thing. We know that this is an addiction. We know this. Uh, and I pointed it out to my husband because I was facing the restaurant, so I could see this happening, and he was facing a window, so he couldn't see it. And he looked around and he was like, "My goodness." He's like, "Mel, what did we do when we were kids?" And I took this long pause and I was like, we lived. That's what we did. Our generation, we had the opportunity to live and not have this limb extension that was always in our hands, that was always competing for our attention, that was always calling us to go and scroll. Like, my goodness, we lived. And I feel for these kids because, like I said, it's an addiction. They don't even notice they're doing it. And even if they do notice, it's really hard to break free from social media. So, are we modeling this for our kids too? When we're sitting at the dinner table, is our phone on the table? Or do we walk into the house and put the phone in a safe, sacred space and then go and have our time with our children? Something that I've learned a lot about recently is taking a digital Sabbath, meaning that if you can't take all the time in the world off your phone, because I know realistically speaking today, we cannot. What if we took a digital Sabbath and every Wednesday we decided that we're going to go phone free? Or if a whole day is too hard, every Wednesday from like 4 p.m. to 8 p.m we take a digital Sabbath. Like, is there a way that we can get away from our phones just a little bit? Because that is the gift we give ourselves. It's the gift we give our next generation who is witnessing us and watching us. And picking up on our cues of how to be, on how to live. Okay. So I'm going to share one other thing. And again, this is at the crux of everything that we are here to say. We hold so much power. We have such a great ability to manage the perspectives, the perceptions that children hold. So much of their perception comes from our perception, especially when they are children who are living under our roof. When they leave, when they go to college, when they take their gap year, when they travel, their perceptions will be shaped by so many other experiences and people that they come into contact with. But as long as they are under our roof, we have this big, bold, beautiful opportunity to teach them to take charge, to take power over their lives, from the way they speak to the things that they consume to the way that they think. Our belief in their potential teaches them to believe in their own limitless abilities. So I often say in our workshops, I say to our coaches, we get to be these girls' wings until they learn to fly. So they come into our orbit and we are peeling off the layers of shame and fear and doubt that have been placed on them, and we're reminding them of all of the superpowers that live inside of them. And we get to do that with any young person who is in our universe. We get to do that for them. We get to remind them that they were born with every tool that they could possibly need to live their best life. They just have to remove all of the things that have told them that they're powerless, all of the things they've consumed, all of the messages they've heard. Uh, Empowerment is avoiding any thoughts that weaken you, right? So, how can we start feeding them thoughts that strengthen them? How can we start helping them to discern between the things, the junk that comes into their world and the genius that comes into their world? How can we help them discern and allow the other stuff to filter out and retain the good stuff? The ability to harness their own power, the ability to heal themselves, the ability to use their intuition. We are here. I remember in my big fat Greek wedding, there was this amazing quote that the mother said. She's like, when I influence my husband, he never really knows it. I'm like the neck. I help him turn his head and his eyes into the correct direction. And so we get to do the same thing. We get to help harness their power by pre-framing the way they see things and where they choose to look. So, my beautiful people, I hope that this episode was helpful to you. If it was, please share it on your socials. Tag me at GiRLiFE Empowerment. Share it with someone who you know will benefit. Let's get this empowerment party going. As promised, we have a beautiful free training coming up for all of you. It's one of those intensives where we spend 3 to 5 days together, and I pour my love of women's empowerment and girls' empowerment and the business of running like a girls' empowerment business, a heart-centered business. I'm pouring it all in from my heart to yours. So stay tuned. Keep listening to this podcast. As always, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know there are a million things you could be listening to. I know there are 1,000 things you could be doing with your time, but the fact that you are hanging out here, up-leveling yourself, I don't take that lightly. So I love you, I mean it, and I will talk to you again next week. If you love what you're hearing on the Empowering Her podcast, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a 5-star review. And as a thank you, I would love to share a free audio with you called Claiming Your Enoughness Now. Simply share a screenshot of your review with me on Instagram at GiRLiFE Empowerment with 1 L, either in the DMs or in a story, and I will send the gift your way. Thank you so much for your listenership. I can't express how much it means to me.